So good evening. In the name of the Friends of the Secession, I warmly welcome you here tonight for the artist talk between Lazar Lyutakov and Luca Lo Pinto. This exhibition has the title 1 Million Random Numbers, and we look forward to hearing more about it shortly. I'm taking this opportunity just to announce the program of tonight. This artist talk is followed by the openings of 3 exhibitions. Here in this space, Lazar's show, in the gallery space downstairs, the exhibition by Delaine Lebas, and in the Grafische Kabinett upstairs, the video installation by the Taiwanese artist Chen Che Ren. After the opening at 7:45, there will be a live performance in the context of Delaine Lebas' exhibition. As of 8 p.m., the board of the Artists Association of the Secession cordially invites everyone here to their traditional Sommerfest in the garden. So much for the schedule of tonight. Many here will be acquainted and familiar with Luca Lo Pinto, since he was working as a curator at the Kunsthalle Wien from 2014 to 2019. He followed his calling as artistic director of Macro, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Rome. As curator, he produced a range of solo exhibitions with numerous international artists, and there are just too many to take the time to list them here. He's the co-founder of the magazine and publishing house Nero, and is contributor to numerous art magazines. We all have read him, and catalogs. In Vienna, he has just recently curated an exhibition right across the street from us, dedicated to Friedel Kubelka von Gröller at Phileas. It is also with great pleasure, or it is mainly with great pleasure, that the central artist here in the main space is welcomed by us, Lazar Lyutakov. I thank you so much, Lazar, for suggesting Luca Lo Pinto. It was his choice as your partner in conversation. What a fabulous idea. Lazar first started his studies in art at the National Academy in Sofia and graduated in 2005 from the Academy of Bildende Künste, also across the street here in Vienna. He has shown in many international biennials and institutions, and right now I'm just mentioning the most recent ones in 2021 at Simian in Copenhagen or at Harim Gallery here in Vienna. In 2019, Lazar, together with Rada Bukova, represented Bulgaria at the Venice Biennale. In his artistic practice, Lyutakov reflects on contemporary conditions of production, forms of consumption, and on aesthetic mass phenomena. He carefully chooses objects and crafts from entirely different contexts, appropriates and adapts them. By his selective interference, he points to the contrast of the unique and the serial, and thus speaks about values, productivity, quality, and the use of an industrialized world. Lazar and Luca, we look forward to your public conversation, and you have 50 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you everyone for coming. So we have to speak very, very slow. Good evening, or good afternoon, considering the light. So I arrived an hour ago, so I'm still digesting the exhibition. So I thought maybe it would be a more kind of studio visit type of conversation than a proper planned talk.
Really?
Yeah. So I was here, I think, a week ago, or 8 days ago, and was still at the Vivian Suter show, which of course fill the space in a complete different way. Since I like to imagine any exhibition space as also as a storage or depot of memories of the works and shows that has hosted. I'm curious if you, first of all, if you had looked at, if you research on the history of exhibitions done in this space.
Yeah.
Or not at all?
I did. I tried to remember things I've seen here happening in this space. And then I also scrolled over the documentation online. Then I also thought about like how special this space is in terms of like how loaded it is with meaning, right? And also I tried to remember or think about the most radical gesture which have ever happened here. Not because I wanted to do one, just I was really curious because I was thinking more from the perspective of like how much do I want to put inside? Do I want to have like a very minimal installation here with just a couple of objects? Or I want to fill up the space with something, like something material, or maybe not only. So,
which was the most radical thing you've seen here?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the Bordel installation of Christoph Büchel on one hand, and then on another hand, it was the Althammer work which guided the visitors from that door to that one in a kind of like a hallway, and everything happened outside and developed some sort of social dynamic towards the outside. This is what I think about.
But you were mainly concerned about the density rather than about doing a strong conceptual gesture.
I was mainly concerned about the fact that I just wanted to like offer like a lot in terms of experience, like and that I didn't want to do a radical gesture here, even though I mean, of course, somehow I want it, but not on this way that you just come in and everything is entirely transformed into something else and you don't know anymore where you are, right? Like, yeah.
So since I always dislike these lava lamps, I'm curious to know instead what prompted you to use them as a main characters of this exhibition.
Yeah. Well, the lava lamps, they are not the real lamps, actually, because this is not a lamp which gives light to the space so that you can see objects. It's more like a screen. So that's the first point which somehow attracted my attention at the very beginning, when I even didn't know that I'm going to use lava lamps for some art later. But I was like thinking about what is this weird item. It's not the only one I know, though, which is a lamp, but it's meant to be something you're looking at rather than it gives light. And I do like light because, of course, light defines space, and it's very interesting. And as you know, I also work with design of light, because this is like an instrument for me to understand how things become desirable for people. So one of these days, the lava lamp was just like floating in air too, and then I found out that in the book 1000 Light Designs from Taschen, that was the only lamp which was not done by a designer. It's not been made by someone whose profession is being a designer. It's just a guy who was a pilot in the Second World War. He was some kind of like activist for naked body culture. And he was going to a bar in Britain somewhere, and this object was there. The first prototype was done by someone else. And he was experimenting on how to create a timer which will indicate when an egg has been boiled. And this, after the owner of this bar passed away, he spoke to the widow and somehow took the rights of being allowed to use this idea, and he created this lava lamp. So, and then, you know, so many people does not like this lamp and think that it is such a kitschy, stupid object, and in a way it is. On another hand, it has something. Why is it so likable then for other people? Is it because there is something unexplainable about it trapped in that bottle? Is it something very spacey and cosmic? And how about why this lava lamp became such an important item for the hippie culture and the counterculture? How did that came? Because it was meant to be a luxury object somehow, and maybe more like stay on the desk of an important guy in his office, and then suddenly it ended up like being a trip, like buy a lava lamp, you don't need to take acid. So all these layers of narratives were like interesting to me. Yeah, so I sort of like got into it somehow.
So when these lava lamps were invented and launched, so basically in the early 60s, they were a luxury object or not?
I think they were advertised as something really special, really exceptional. It's really interesting to read the published book from the company called Crestworth back then about how to sell the lava lamp. They actually like had a little booklet. And the company was giving that to all the retailers around the United Kingdom, right? And inside, the guy was writing that you can enter a space, and maybe you will maybe not like the lava lamp, but surely you can't ignore it. And probably it is so successful because it illustrates the pattern of our life existence. Because you have a bubble which grows up from nothing to set off its offsprings before it cools down and falls down and kind of like dies. So it's a metaphor of life itself, you know. Like he's also speaking about Freud in this little booklet, and his theories about the pleasure, how important pleasure is in the psychology. So already in its very beginning, the lava lamp was starting to behave like an artwork.
Yeah, at the end there are more decorative objects. At the end there are dysfunctional lamps, because as you said, they don't function as a proper like light devices. And of course, as you mentioned, you tend to kind of connect this imagery of fluid, a bit psychedelic, of course, with the hippie movement and the psychedelic also imagery movement, and in a way they also are a kind of commodification of also of all that counterculture movement. And but it's interesting because the other 3 days ago was on the, I think, Wall Street Journal, an article about how all these CEO or people from the Silicon Valley and from the tech world are into psychedelic drugs. So from Steve Jobs was really heavy consumer of LSD, Elon Musk loves ketamine and so on. And actually it's interesting to look at the technological devices and products that they invented, how if you look through this lens of psychedelic kind of imagery is quite intriguing. And I mean, when I look at this effect of these lamps, I immediately think of screensavers, or this kind of cheap effect that you have also on your phone, or this sort of
but also think about this effect of passivity, which is coming with the lava lamp, right? It's like it makes you passive. What is the thing now making you passive? It's the screen of your phone. You're scrolling. It's like of course, but that is this another, yeah, and this connection between internet business and psychedelia and intuition, spiritualism, and its monetary dimension is also super interesting, and was yeah, it was probably the moment when I could see that also somehow as one of the narratives which could be part of this work, when I actually decided to go for it and develop it further. Like exactly that connection between spirituality and business with our eyes on the Silicon Valley. Yeah.
But let's talk more specific and in a more concrete terms about the exhibition also, because all the lava lamps in the room some are original lava lamps in the sense they're still produced handmade in Britain, in UK. Others instead are kind of cheaper version of them. And so what was your kind of interventions? As often with your work, they're kind of appropriated objects, so kind of quasi ready-mades. And so what was your surplus as what's the artistic addendum?
Yeah. Well, the first and most important thing was that I decided that I'm not going to intervene in the design of the lava lamps and not, for example, create my own lava lamps, even though I have a bit of an experience in designing lamps. So they're all appropriated, and then it was like, I mean, on one hand, it was pretty much about what's available. I also bought collections from people, a person who is even here tonight, like a part of a collection, and I guess that was the part which was less interesting for her. But you know, it's like it's an instrument. It's like a color pencil. You don't need to have the best pencil to make a nice drawing. And then, of course, I knew that the size of the lava lamp is going to be a bit of a challenge, because the space is really large, and I knew that it would be easier for me to work with objects which are a little bit bigger than, let's say, this size behind me. But then I also knew that I'm not going to make a lava lamp museum here, and that I have to be really careful to not get everything, or try to get everything, and work with the fetish really carefully, and maybe even take off the spectacular rather than accelerating it, because I mean, it was about doing a work which is based on a commodity object which is meant to be spectacular. So, and then of course, when you use more of this object together and you make an artwork out of it, then it gets even more spectacular. So I knew that I have to, well, careful, I don't know, but I had to be aware of all of that. And yeah.
In some cases, you just present the lamp as it is. I would say in a few cases. In others, you just remove the top of it, or you slightly alter the liquid inside, because the effect of the lamp, I think, would be interesting if you can explain how it works. Because instead of playing on the spectacularization of the object, on what makes these lamps intriguing and sexy, you're basically you took exactly the opposite path. You kind of turned them into kind of semi-silent objects. So you kind of decelerated the potentiality of also of this colorful liquid psychedelic. So you.
Yeah, well, I mean, once I kind of like decided the parameters of everything what's going to happen, once I defined the playground, I started playing like a sculptor in its studio. Like I really had great fun in doing exactly the contrary of what a real lava lamp lover would do. There is something called the perfect flow. This perfect flow is the holy grail of a lava lamp. This perfect flow depends on many partly scientific details. Like people are adding drops of something into the mixture in order to get the perfect flow. The perfect flow is ephemeral. It's temporary. It gets lost over time. You keep on using the lamp, the perfect flow somehow gets lost. So you kind of like a lava lamp collector is constantly in a search of like the perfect flow and preserving the perfect flow as long as possible and sort of like recovering it when it's lost. Me, I could do everything against the perfect flow. Like I leave them open so heat gets lost. When you lose heat, then probably you have less of a flow, but then you have a shape which evaluates much slower. You can work with that as an artist. When you like take off the liquid and leave the bottle open and you have only half of the liquid, you are already like well, creating a new situation here, which can have a meaning, and I'm not meaning here a specific meaning, but it just starts, you know, like creating a narrative about an experiment with a very unclear outcome and purpose. But all of that could be an instrument for creating sculpture and adapting some or developing some playful way of working with shape, color, time, and basically like so many things, right? Because I also didn't ignore completely some of the other interests I have when we spoke at the beginning about design, and like why do they need to look like a rocket? Is it a phallic object? Is it like a is there something like, why is it a missile? What about the color combinations? What color combinations are? All of that. So I've been also like going through a little design study for myself as well. Like when did they start getting so ugly? Like, yeah.
Also, I feel there is the tension between the unplanned or uncontrolled effect given by the liquid of the lamps and this very precise, modular kind of setting you decide to choose to present them. So is this something you were interested in, or is what it is?
That one comes from the real life. It's a found situation. It's a found situation because, as we just said, so many of these people now shaping the internet at the moment are having a spiritual hippie past. Of course, when they had some problem to resolve, from the actually it starts at the 50s. It was clear that we need source of randomness for even lottery. It was back then. Now, of course, it's the encryption on the internet. We need that. We need like some randomness and some chaos to be able to lock things up, to be able to encrypt things. But it's not easy to generate that. It can be very time-consuming if you start throwing dice. What they did, these people in the 50s. Well, and then in the 90s, of course, the hunger for random numbers was so big that it was a challenge for some scientists and some nerds in the Silicon Valley, and some of them came to the idea that, okay, but then we can use the lava lamp as a source of entropy because it's so unpredictable. And this company was called Silicon Graphics, and they were quite young, I think, back then, when they developed that and patented that in the middle of the 90s. And so they started filming or photographing the lava lamp and had a set of 6 lava lamps and were just using that to extract data, which they gave to the computer to create more data, high-quality data. And they had this situation, and I've seen that on the internet, and I've seen the lava lamp in kind of like a laboratory situation, and this really like triggered my imagination quite a lot.
So is the title connected to that?
The title is connected to a book in the 50s, 1 Million Random Numbers. I think like many people were working on that book. The book is only random numbers. They are super interesting reviews on that book on Amazon. People are really like having really funny comments about that book because it's only random numbers, and they say things like, at the beginning you don't understand it, but once you passed page 20, it starts getting really exciting and stuff like that. Anyway, it was super difficult to generate 1 million random numbers. Where was I? Like, so yes, and Silicon Graphics had this situation already. Of course, not so playful, not so colorful, but I've seen it, and then I've seen it, and I was like, okay, so it looks like some serious problems are going to be resolved here, but in the middle of that, it's just this thing which is so complex in itself and has this double life. People love it, people hate it. And this is how it started. So I kind of like took this image and developed everything out of it. To also answer your other question about the title, then what I did like about this 1 million is also that it shows these limitations we have to explain the unexplainable. 1 million. First of all, it's somehow like really implanted in the pop culture, like when I made my first million, right? That's like a part of endlessly many hip-hop songs, I guess. But then also 1 million is still the half of 2 million. And it's 10 times less than 10 million. So it's like this attempt to sort of like get to the really big thing, but then like, you know, it's still just like
But talking about numbers, I'm curious if you started by collecting these lamps, and once you were able to collect a certain number, then you thought about the display, or vice versa, because there are, I don't know, how many lamps are in the space?
Well, here 100, and then I guess another 30, don't know, maybe 40.
So you first started by, also because there are different sizes, different types?
I started working on the display. I knew what I can do with the lamps, I knew about what kind of lamps I can get, and it took me like a lot of hours to order and to look for. But then like, I also had to go deeper into laboratory equipment and how this equipment is, what kind of like material possibility it gives me. So as a raw material, what can I do out of it? And what is the principles real laboratories are using when they want to create like a heavy-duty frame for doing their real experiments then. I mean, even though what is a real experiment, I also ended up being some kind of like a mad scientist in my studio and like mixing things, of course, on a very different way, on a very superficial way also, I have to say, because the whole thing builds up a bit also on a certain simplicity. You know, so many people do art based on real science and on like things which are very complex. What I didn't want to do, and it's not my interest at all. I'm much more interested in this like very straightforward, simple connection to like street culture, pop culture, domestic environment, interior. So there is nothing special about it, you know.
But I would say the display is quite, plays a central role. I remember the first work of yours that I saw was here in Vienna. I think it was at the MAC, and was a sequence of shoes on the floor of the same brand. These kind of Kung Fu, right?
Kung Fu shoes, yeah.
What was the brand name?
Feiyue.
Feiyue. I really like also because it was very also kind of straightforward and sort of humble and modest. The display. Also, I really love floor pieces in general. So, but that was kind of very
how to avoid the pedestal.
Yeah, like how to get rid of the pedestal.
Who's going to write the first book on how to avoid the pedestal?
And I had the impression that also with your other works, the objects as always kind of, even if the display is always important, the objects stands a bit more than the supporting structures. While here, maybe more than what I expected, is really kind of balance. And so, for instance, the ones on the back, and they are more kind of a sculptural unity rather than having an objects and a display structures to exhibit it.
This is how it turned out to be, but I think it's just, I mean, okay, you've seen also the work in Venice. That was also work where the display looked pretty much as a normal display until you kind of like take a good look at it and then you see that something's wrong with it and it's a part of the work. So, you know, I kind of like following or repeating things or breaking things which are already existing. So I was really pretty much into I want to see what's possible to do as a display when I just do a laboratory frame display which already exists. I didn't like invent I didn't go too playful with it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like all of that you see here could actually be hanging in a laboratory.
Maybe because when you mentioned the idea of using these lamps, I don't know why, but I imagine more like a single installation frontal, playing a lot with the visual effects. Instead, here it's very dry, kind of very clinical, lab style, and I'm also curious about the presence of these standing walls in the middle. I mean, here it's more like I'm curious about the choreography of the exhibition.
Yeah, well, I've been like over the years I've been becoming more and more aware how important the choreography of an exhibition is. So I knew that if I have everything without any architecture inside, there will be the risk that you enter, you see everything. Everything is very loud. Because it's a lamp, it has a light, it's moving, and then it's just gonna be like too fast and not so productive. I like thinking about the visitor walking through the exhibition and maybe discovering things around the corner. And then the Secession just offered me the possibility to work with these walls, the Krishenich walls, which are so elegant and are somehow part of the house, and they are a modular system, and the whole grid and frame of my display is also a modular system, And I told you in this conversation we had in the cafe that I like the modularity in our days because it comes a little bit with with this promise from the industry to give you a certain freedom in your hands as a consumer. Think about an IKEA kitchen. Before you would go to a carpenter and he will measure your house and he will be in the kitchen. Now you can be the designer yourself. That's so great. You can design your own shoes, apropos, or design your own kitchen. So the freedom kind of like can have a monetary aspect. They love using that as they love selling us freedom. So from that perspective, the modular systems being all over now are really interesting to me. And I like using that as in the exhibitions also because they're very practical. Because you don't have to decide everything in advance. You can still kind of like assemble things differently. You can make a different show in a different space with same works, and it's not going to look entirely the same. They're practical. You can disassemble things. And then there was a modular system here too. So I was like, of course, I'm going to use it. It's also even environmental. So, and they're nice. And then I thought really long about it, it's true. Like, I remember being very happy when I decided that there will be like 3 walls like that, and it's going to be not so easy to understand why exactly this order. But I think once you are inside and you start walking through the space, you see how helpful they are in order to erase parts of the exhibition and vice versa, yeah.
Also, the cables and let's say the infrastructure are very strong, and and I noticed there that there is a sort of exception. This kind of what's the thing to measure in that mobile shelves?
This thermometer.
This thermometer.
Yeah, this thermometer. Maybe it's not a good idea to have this thermometer
so you
there.
can remove now before the opening.
No, we leave it as
time.
a bad idea. We leave it as evidence of a bad idea. Well, the thermometer, that's a laboratory thermometer. So since I'm kind of like playing an unclear laboratory process here, right, and constantly suggesting things which I don't even know myself what exactly they are.
But you didn't want to play with the idea of the mise en scène of a lab. This was not
of a lamp.
Of a lab, laboratory.
No.
Okay.
No. I know what you mean. Like I could, of course, like make a real laboratory here, but I think that's too easy. I could actually like make you feel
agree.
Sometimes. It's much more interesting to sort of like bring the spectator into like a situation which is not so clear, which looks a little bit like a lab sometimes, but sometimes not at all. Which looks a little bit like a shop, like it was in the case of my work in Venice. But then one more time you get very unsure because, but then what kind of a shop is it then? No, it's not a shop, but it could be a shop.
And this is considered one installation, or let's say if this was a show in a commercial gallery, will be sold individually like set or not? What's the afterlife of this?
It's not one installation, no.
Okay.
It's a modular system of an exhibition.
That's smart. And I have a final question, I would say curiosity. So since most of your work is based on appropriation, which is a very difficult term related to art history, I'm curious what pushed you, I mean, an artist of your generation, to deal with that after what has been explored in that sort of field, especially in the 80s. By the way, I found a photo of a work by Steinbach, which used the lava lamp.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
I'll show you the photo later because we have the opening and the summer party, so we don't have to destroy.
No, but I feel good when you say Steinbach because that's exactly like. I think it's really clear then how different my appropriation art is, which is not interested in the fetish at all, and also like actually, isn't it just one part of what I'm doing? Because then, again, there is too much of a mess by myself afterwards. And then there is also this narrative about economy and production and distribution here, probably pretty much in the background, but I know that it is there because that's the main motivation for my praxis, like going into the how do we consume things and how all that happens. So I also just ended up that way. Didn't really decide what I want to do.
What was before paintings?
Expressive paintings. No. In fact, yes, there's something like that. Yeah.
So I think.
But it was a very long time ago. It's like.
The time is over, I guess.
I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lazar. Thank you, Luca.
Thank you.
Please